Previously, Gu Yue Qing Shu unleashed the full power of the wood charm Gu and fought Bai Ning Bing in a battle that pushed both of them to the edge of death. Qing Shu sacrificed everything for his clan, while Fang Yuan returned to the battlefield and quietly seized valuable Gu worms from the dying Bai Ning Bing. Now, as Qing Shu's death shakes Gu Yue village, Fang Zheng searches for a reason to keep moving forward. Bai Ning Bing begins to question the meaning of life, and Fang Yuan studies the stone aperture Gu in silence. Let's continue with Reverend Insanity, Episode 16. Under the power of the rank 3 Gu, Qing Shu's eyes turned green. At that moment, the aura around him changed completely. The vitality of a living man faded, replaced by the deep stillness of an ancient forest. Oh. Bai Ning Bing was briefly surprised, but the corner of his mouth soon lifted. It has been a long time since we last fought. It seems you have learned a few interesting tricks. Icicle Gu. At his command, 5 razor-sharp icicles condensed out of empty air. Go. Bai Ning Bing pointed and the icicles shot forward. Thud, thud, thud. 2 green vines burst from Qing Shu's palms. They lashed through the air like agile serpents, knocking the icicles aside with ease. The deflected projectiles skimmed past Qing Shu's shoulders and buried themselves in the frozen ground, becoming yet another cluster of icy sculptures in the forest. Qing Shu had used skill to overcome brute force, rendering Bai Ning Bing's attack useless. Bai Ning Bing gave a cold laugh. Your whips have become much more entertaining. But I would like to see how many you can stop. Blue light shone from his eyes. 10 icicles appeared at once, floating before him before streaking toward Qing Shu like lightning. Then another 10 condensed, and another. Again and again until an entire storm of ice filled the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The icicles tore through the wind with shrill, terrifying whistles. Qing Shu dodged while his 2 vines whipped back and forth at blinding speed. He had trained with them countless times. By now, the vines moved as naturally as his own arms, responding to the slightest thought. But there were simply too many icicles. Sooner or later, something had to slip through. One pierced Qing Shu's right shoulder, punching clean through until its sharp tip emerged from his back. Pine needle Gu. Suppressing the pain, Qing Shu swung his long hair. Countless emerald pine needles burst outward. They swept toward Bai Ning Bing, but he activated the water shield Gu in time. Under the enhancement of the Northern Dark Ice Soul Physique, the water barrier had become thicker and stronger. Its defense no weaker than that of a rank 3 Gu worm. The pine needles struck the spinning sphere. Their speed rapidly declined before the flowing water hurled them away. Even so, the attack forced Bai Ning Bing to halt his barrage. Qing Shu seized the opening. Gritting his teeth, he tore the icicle from his shoulder. Not a drop of blood flowed from the wound. Partly because the cold had frozen it shut, and partly because his body was steadily turning into wood. Bai Ning Bing dismissed the water shield Gu, his gaze drawn to Qing Shu's injury. Through the torn cloth, he could clearly see wooden grains spreading across the wound. The flesh knitted together at a speed visible to the naked eye, and rings like those of a tree formed across the newly grown skin. At the same time, Qing Shu's ears began to lengthen. His dark hair turned green, broad leaves sprouting between the strands. His arms lost the color of flesh and darkened, while the skin across his body hardened into rough brown bark. This was the first time he had ever used the wood charm Gu without caring about the consequences. The Gu steadily transformed him into a tree spirit. At the same time, Qing Shu became aware of the natural essence filling the air. Ordinary Gu masters could not sense this essence. Only special life forms such as tree spirits could perceive it, absorb it, and use it directly. Qing Shu felt as though he had returned to his mother's womb. Dense natural essence surrounded him on every side, warm and comforting. The moonworld Gu within him did not react, but the green vine Gu, pine needle Gu, and vitality leaves all sent waves of joy through his mind. Now that Qing Shu possessed the body of a tree spirit, the power of every woodpath Gu worm he used was greatly enhanced. He drew in a deep breath. Never in his life had he felt so powerful. The endless natural essence around him gave him an almost inexhaustible supply of primeval essence. This was the true strength of the wood charm Gu. Yet fear rose within him at the same time. He knew that if he became addicted to this power and continued using the wood charm Gu without restraint, he would eventually lose himself and die as a tree man. Everything had a price. Qing Shu quickly suppressed that fear. He fixed his gaze on Bai Ning Bing and spoke only 2 words, "Let us fight." The battle erupted at once. Vines tangled with ice blades. Icicles collided with pine needles in midair. On one side stood the northern dark ice soul Physique, whose primeval essence recovered at a monstrous rate. On the other stood a tree spirit, capable of drawing directly upon the natural essence of heaven and earth. Their battle had already surpassed the level of ordinary rank 3 Gu masters. From the distant hillside, Fang Zheng stared in a daze. He had never witnessed a battle so fierce, so unrestrained, or so magnificent. Normally, a Gu master's primeval essence was limited. Every portion had to be calculated carefully and spent with caution, as though walking across thin ice. But Qing Shu and Bai Ning Bing used their primeval essence almost recklessly, as if their reserves would never run dry. The entire mountain road was torn apart beneath them, ancient trees toppled, boulders shattered. The earth itself seemed unable to endure their clash. They fought for a long time. Then Bai Ning Bing caught an opening. Bluebird ice coffin Gu, he suddenly opened his mouth. A small bluebird flew out from between his teeth, releasing a clear cry. It had first appeared no larger than a pigeon. But under the power of the northern dark ice soul Physique, it swelled as it rose into the air, becoming as large as an eagle. After circling once, it folded its wings and dived straight toward Qing Shu. Qing Shu had no time to evade. He could only face it head-on. Boom, the bird exploded. A block of ice as large as a room formed around Qing Shu, sealing him inside. It's over. Bai Ning Bing sighed with genuine regret. He looked at Qing Shu, frozen and motionless within the ice, and murmured, "Thank you for such an enjoyable fight. This was the finest battle I have experienced so far. Qing Shu, your death was not meaningless. I will remember you, Lord Qing Shu." Fang Zheng cried out from the edge of the slope. "What are you shouting for, little ants?" Bai Ning Bing snorted and began walking toward him. "You are next." At that exact moment, the sound of cracking ice rang through the mountain road. Bai Ning Bing stopped and turned. How is that possible? Inside the ice, Qing Shu's body was undergoing a terrifying transformation. He began to grow larger. His rank 2 Gu master uniform tightened, then split apart. His hair became a mass of vines. Palm-sized green leaves layered over one another in dense clusters. His fingers turned completely to wood. His arms and legs thickened into massive branches, retaining only the rough shape of human limbs. With a tremendous crash, the block of ice shattered. Qing Shu rose to his feet. He no longer resembled the gentle and handsome young man he had once been. His face had become that of a tree spirit, with a pointed nose and enormous eyes. He stood nearly 3 meters tall. His body was broad and powerful, covered in heavy brown bark like a suit of armor, while green leaves and vines spread across his frame. Bai Ning Bing stared at him in shock. Compared with the transformed Qing Shu, he looked like a child standing before an adult. This form. Did you really refine the wood charm Gu? That Gu is even harder to refine than my frost demon Gu. Bai Ning Bing finally understood. A tree spirit can directly absorb the natural essence in the air. No wonder Qing Shu's primeval essence seemed endless. Yet the realization only deepened his confusion. He asked directly, "Qing Shu, if you continue using the wood charm Gu like this, you will become a tree man and die. Even if you defeat me, you are already doomed. Are you really willing to go that far, Bai Ning Bing?" Qing Shu's voice had become deep and resonant. "I understand you because I once stood where you stand. Like you, I was an orphan. Like you, I was adopted by a clan leader. Yet the paths we chose could not have been more different." He paused, then continued. "In a forest, the death of a single tree means nothing. As long as the forest survives, countless others will continue to grow and rise. This will be our final battle, my old enemy." The moment he finished speaking, hundreds of thick green vines surged toward Bai Ning Bing like giant pythons. For the clan. Bai Ning Bing retreated, his face darkening. How foolish. But the vines were several times faster than before. They caught up almost immediately. Bai Ning Bing twisted and dodged with extraordinary agility. Vine after vine swept past him, striking the ground and mountain walls. Dirt exploded upward and rocks burst apart under the impact. Water shield Gu. As the attacks grew too dense to evade, Bai Ning Bing hurriedly summoned the spherical water barrier. Qing Shu had already recognized the Gu worm's weakness. Rather than striking the shield directly, he controlled the vines and wrapped them around the entire sphere. Then he tightened his grip. The water shield Gu hissed. Water spun violently across its surface, crashing against the vines and spraying outward in sheets. But the sphere could not withstand the pressure. It contracted further and further, showing signs of collapse. This is bad. Once the water shield breaks and the vines bind my arms and legs, Qing Shu will crush me to death. Bai Ning Bing made his decision without hesitation. The next instant the water shield burst apart, whoosh. A storm of ice blades erupted from within it, spinning faster and faster. Since defense was no longer possible, Bai Ning Bing would answer attack with attack. The temperature plunged, frost spread through the air. A white cyclone of ice blades surged toward Qing Shu. The vines could not stop it. They were sliced into countless pieces before they could draw near. Excellent, Qing Shu showed no fear. His enormous body charged straight into the storm. With a deafening crash, he collided with the cyclone. He threw both arms around it. SHHK, SHHK, SHHK. The ice blades carved into him. Leaves flew in all directions, and layer after layer of bark was shaved away. The pain was like being cut apart by 1,000 knives. Qing Shu released a low roar, but he refused to let go. His arms tightened with all their strength. Under that crushing pressure, the ice blade cyclone began to shrink. Damn it, this suicidal madman. Bai Ning Bing cursed inwardly. The situation had gone beyond either side's control. Neither could withdraw now. Bai Ning Bing could only condense more ice blades and force the cyclone to spin faster, while Qing Shu continued compressing it with raw strength. The blades grinding against Qing Shu's body gradually dulled, only to sharpen again under Bai Ning Bing's power. One of them would die. Either Qing Shu would crush Bai Ning Bing, or Bai Ning Bing would cut Qing Shu apart. Their battle had become both tragic and magnificent. Fang Zheng stood far away, barely daring to breathe. This was the decisive moment. Victory or defeat would be determined by the outcome of this single collision. Lord Qing Shu, you can do it. Fang Zheng's entire body trembled with tension. He knew that approaching would only make him a burden, so all he could do was shout encouragement. As though he had heard Fang Zheng's voice, Qing Shu forced the cyclone smaller and smaller. Damn it. I am actually running out of primeval essence. Bai Ning Bing clenched his teeth. The cyclone's speed continued to fall. The northern dark ice soul physique restored primeval essence at a terrifying rate, but at rank 3. Even its recovery was slightly inferior to the wood charm Gu's ability to directly use natural essence. Had Bai Ning Bing already reached rank 4, his recovery would have far surpassed Qing Shu's. But life and death battles cared nothing for what might have been. Victory or defeat had to be accepted as it came. At last the ice blade cyclone stopped. Qing Shu had paid a terrible price. His arms, once as thick as carriage beams, had been nearly destroyed. Only 2 fingers remained on his left hand and 3 on his right. More than half of each palm had been shaved away. Yet as his hand slowly closed, new branches rapidly grew from the ruined flesh. They intertwined, forming a wooden cage around Bai Ning Bing. Damn it. Bai Ning Bing gritted his teeth. His primeval essence had been exhausted. He could only watch as Qing Shu's hands moved closer. We won. Fang Zheng jumped and shouted from the distance. Am I really going to die? Bai Ning Bing screamed within his heart. The 2 massive hands drew nearer. Once they closed completely, he would be crushed into a pulp of blood and flesh. But the closer they came, the slower they moved. Then halfway together they stopped. Bai Ning Bing froze. A moment later he understood what had happened and joy flashed across his face. Damn it, I was only 1 step away. Qing Shu's heart filled with bitter regret. He could no longer feel his hands. They had completely turned into wood. Soon, even his internal organs faded from his senses. The wood charm Gu had consumed almost his entire body. Death was close. No, it cannot end like this. I can still use the green vine Gu. Qing Shu forced his fading consciousness to remain awake and activated the Gu worm. Thick vines pushed through the gaps in the wooden cage and attacked Bai Ning Bing. Bai Ning Bing dodged again and again, but after so many battles, his stamina was nearly exhausted. The cage also left him little room to maneuver. At last, a vine wrapped around his right leg and threw him to the ground. It is over. Relief spread through Qing Shu's mind. More than 10 vines immediately surged after Bai Ning Bing. At the edge of death, a small amount of primeval essence finally recovered within Bai Ning Bing's aperture, barely enough for one final action. Without hesitation, he poured all of it into the ice blade Gu and formed a new blade. The weapon flashed. The vine around his leg was severed. Bai Ning Bing rolled away in a desperate, graceless motion, narrowly avoiding the 10 vines that stabbed down after him. They struck the ground and drilled through the thick earth. Mud exploded upward. A moment later, the vines burst back out and continued their pursuit. Bai Ning Bing panted heavily, struggling to defend himself with the ice blade. Vines attacked from every direction. In that life-or-death moment, he made a mistake and was caught once again. Yet he was still a true genius. Under the pressure of death, his full potential erupted. His movements became crisp, direct, and precise. He blocked, cut, and dodged with perfect economy. Though vines occasionally tripped him and danger closed around him again and again, he somehow protected his life. One vine after another was severed, their numbers gradually fell. It was not that Qing Shu did not want to produce more. The natural essence in the surrounding air had nearly been exhausted. Essence from farther away continued flowing toward the battlefield, but it was too thin to satisfy the green vine Gu's needs. Worse still, the wood charm Gu had completely consumed Qing Shu's body and had begun eroding his consciousness. His thoughts broke apart. At times, his mind went blank. Death had already appeared upon his face. Is this really the end? No, he refused to accept it. Gathering the last fragments of his will, Qing Shu made one final attempt to kill Bai Ning Bing. He could no longer see. The wood charm Gu had destroyed his eyes. He could no longer hear. His ears still had shape but no longer functioned. Only a faint sense of touch remained. By feeling Bai Ning Bing's counterattacks, Qing Shu judged his position and continued attacking. His persistence finally bore fruit. A vine looped around Bai Ning Bing's neck, lifted him from the ground and slowly tightened. Bai Ning Bing immediately began to suffocate. Even with his mouth open, no air entered. Just like Qing Shu, he was approaching death. Fang Yuan breathed heavily. A fierce battle had just ended. 5 corpses lay on the ground, their eyes still open in death. Every one of them had been a Gu master of Bai clan. By using the hidden scale Gu to launch surprise attacks, combined with the Munglo Gu, the strength of 2 boars, and 500 years of battle experience, Fang Yuan had achieved a result far beyond what anyone would have expected from his cultivation level. He had told Qing Shu that he was returning to the village, but that had only been an excuse. After putting some distance between himself and the battlefield, he activated the hidden scale Gu, concealed his body, and circled around the mountain road. One by one, he visited the places where Manxi's group and Xinglai's team had died. He recovered the Gu worms from the 5 members of Manxi's group. But when he reached the place where Xinglai had fallen, the bodies were already gone, along with every Gu worm they had carried. Xinglin must have taken their corpses away. What a pity. I had hoped to obtain Xinglai's brown bear innate strength Gu. Fang Yuan sighed inwardly. Leaving Xinglin alive had never been part of his plan. But by then, Xingjiang had already been killed, and Xinglin had become extremely vigilant. Killing him would have required considerable effort. More importantly, Bai Ning Bing had still been nearby. If Fang Yuan turned on Xinglin, Bai Ning Bing would have been delighted to exploit the opening. Still, the brown bear innate strength Gu might not have been on Xinglai at all. He had already cultivated the strength of a bear. Perhaps he returned the Gu to his clan afterward. Fang Yuan turned his attention toward the distant mountain road. The battle between Qing Shu and Bai Ning Bing had caused an enormous disturbance. There was no chance the nearby wolf packs and Gu masters had failed to notice it. Fang Yuan did not think highly of Qing Shu's chances, but he had personally witnessed the power of the wood charm Gu in his previous life. A battle between Qing Shu and Bai Ning Bing was bound to be a clash between dragons and tigers. Naturally, Fang Yuan had no intention of missing whatever opportunities might appear afterward. He waited nearby. Whenever Gu masters were drawn toward the battlefield by the sound of fighting, Fang Yuan lured wolf packs across their path and trapped them. When there was no time to arrange such a distraction, he killed them himself. The sounds from the mountain road have stopped. It seems the battle is about to be decided. Roots extended from his right ear and sank into the rock beside him, allowing him to hear fragments of what was happening on the distant battlefield. To be fair, Qing Shu's performance had exceeded ordinary limits. And losing his right arm had weakened Bai Ning Bing more than Fang Yuan had expected. But then Fang Yuan's expression suddenly changed. He heard a large number of footsteps approaching the battlefield from both ends of the mountain road. One group was coming from the direction of Gu Yue village. The other was unmistakably from Bai clan village. Each force contained at least 20 Gu masters. A pack led by a bold lightning wolf would never be enough to stop them. Fang Yuan could not lure two separate wolf packs into position at the same time either. Someone must have discovered the battle and reported it. These are reinforcements from both clans. I need to return to the mountain road immediately. Fang Yuan was close enough to arrive before either group. The scene he found was almost exactly what he had expected. Through the gaps in the wooden cage, he saw Bai Ning Bing hanging from a vine, barely alive but still breathing. The defense of his ice muscles preserved his life. Unfortunately for you, you met me. Killing intent surged through Fang Yuan as he rushed toward Bai Ning Bing. Rustle, rustle, rustle. A storm of pine needles suddenly swept toward him. Qing Shu's pine needle Gu had attacked Fang Yuan. What is happening? Fang Yuan retreated repeatedly and avoided the rain of needles. He stared at the enormous tree spirit Qing Shu had become and immediately understood. Qing Shu's consciousness has deteriorated to the point that he can no longer distinguish friend from foe. His obsession is to kill Bai Ning Bing. Anyone who enters this battlefield is treated as an intruder. At that moment, figures from Bai clan appeared at one end of the mountain road. The newcomers looked horrified when they saw the devastation before them. Young man over there, you had better not make another move. A rank 3 Gu master shouted at Fang Yuan, his voice filled with threat. Bai Ning Bing really does have extraordinary luck, Fang Yuan sneered inwardly. He knew that he had lost his chance to deliver the final blow. Qing Shu's mind was already confused. A single vine was not enough to kill Bai Ning Bing, whose ice muscles gave him powerful defense. To approach Bai Ning Bing, Fang Yuan would first have to break through Qing Shu's blockade. Doing so would draw most of Qing Shu's remaining attention toward him, and might even create the opening Bai Ning Bing needed to escape. Even if Fang Yuan forced his way through, the rank 2 and rank 3 elites of Bai clan were not decorations. They would stop him. And dealing with Bai Ning Bing remained extremely dangerous. Primeval essence had already recovered in Bai Ning Bing's aperture, at least enough to activate the blue bird ice coffin Gu once more. Even if Fang Yuan managed to kill him, the Bai clan elites would never allow Fang Yuan to leave alive. Fang Yuan sighed inwardly. The distance is too great. He is more than 20 steps away, while the Moonglow Gu can only attack across 10. Besides, risking my life for someone already doomed to die would interfere with my plans after rebirth. It is not worth it. With that decision made, he took several steps back. The retreat looked cowardly and the Bai clan Gu masters rushing toward the battlefield visibly relaxed. Then Fang Zheng arrived, Lord Qing Shu. His face lit up with joy. Without understanding the danger, he foolishly rushed toward the giant tree spirit. A storm of pine needles immediately drove him back. Team leader, it is me, Fang Zheng, he shouted in confusion. For the first time, he realized that something was terribly wrong. But Qing Shu could no longer answer him. Brother, what happened to Lord Qing Shu? Lost and terrified, Fang Zheng instinctively turned to Fang Yuan for help. Fang Yuan ignored him completely. He crouched and extended his right hand toward Bai Ning Bing, as though grasping at something invisible. Plunder Gu. He activated the Gu worm in secret. A moment later, he felt as though his fingers had closed around something. He pulled sharply. A Gu worm flew out of Bai Ning Bing's body. It was a red steel relic Gu. The Bai clan leader had given it to Bai Ning Bing, but Bai Ning Bing had advanced to rank 3 so quickly that he had never used it. Now Fang Yuan had profited from that restraint. The moment the Bai clan Gu masters saw the red steel relic Gu flying into Fang Yuan's hand, they erupted in fury. Bastard. Stop if you do not want to die. You dare steal a Gu worm belonging to our Bai clan right in front of us. That is a red steel relic Gu, Fang Yuan merely sneered. The instant the Gu worm entered his hand, he released the aura of the spring-autumn cicada and refined it in a breath. He did not place it inside his aperture. Instead, he slipped it into his robes, preventing anyone from realizing that the refinement was already complete. Then he activated the plunder Gu again. This time, a small ash-gray beetle emerged from Bai Ning Bing's body, stone aperture Gu. Recognition flashed in Fang Yuan's eyes. He refined it just as quickly and stored it inside his clothing. Damn it, another Gu worm, stop him, he is robbing us openly. He has no respect for Bai clan at all. The Bai clan Gu masters shouted and charged from the far end of the mountain road. Bai Ning Bing had been raised with the full support of his clan. Every Gu worm on his body was valuable. Watching Fang Yuan steal them in plain sight made the Bai clan Gu masters feel as though their hearts were bleeding. To them, it was almost more painful than being killed themselves. Fang Zheng took a frightened step backward when he saw their murderous approach. Fang Yuan remained completely calm. At that moment, he and Fang Zheng stood on the eastern side of the road, while the Bai clan Gu masters approached from the west. Between them stood Qing Shu's transformed body and the unconscious Bai Ning Bing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Pine needles poured down like endless rain, damn it. The Bai clan Gu masters cursed as Qing Shu blocked their advance. Qing Shu is close to death. He has enough time left for me to use the plunder Gu only once more. What will I obtain this time? Fang Yuan calmed his breathing and activated the Gu again. Each use consumed a substantial amount of primeval essence. The stronger the target Gu worm, the harder it was to seize and the greater the consumption. If the attempt failed, the user would also suffer backlash. For this reason, the plunder Gu was generally considered a tasteless Gu worm, something too wasteful to use, but still too valuable to throw away. Under normal circumstances, it was not widely used. But Bai Ning Bing was now barely conscious, his life burning like the last oil in a dying lamp. Taking Gu worms from him was much easier than usual. The most valuable Gu worm on Bai Ning Bing's body had undoubtedly been the Frost Demon Gu. It was comparable to Qing Shu's Wood Charm Gu and could transform its user into a Frost Demon. But prolonged use would extinguish the Gu Master's life force and leave behind a frozen statue. Bai Ning Bing knew its dangers and had never dared to use it as completely as Qing Shu had used the Wood Charm Gu, after the Frost Demon Gu. The next most valuable Gu worm was the rank 3 Bluebird Ice Coffin Gu, which currently resided in Bai Ning Bing's throat. Obtaining that Gu would be ideal. But the plunder Gu was only rank 2. It was not strong enough to seize whichever Gu worm Fang Yuan desired. In the end, what emerged was Bai Ning Bing's Water Shield Gu. That was still a good result. When combined with the White Jade Gu, it would give Fang Yuan another layer of powerful defense. At last, the Bai clan Gu masters brought down the enormous tree spirit Qing Shu had become. They cut open the wooden cage and rescued Bai Ning Bing, who had lost his right arm and fallen unconscious. Just as they prepared to attack Fang Yuan and Fang Zheng, reinforcements from Gu Yue village arrived as well. The two sides confronted each other for a tense moment. Then, without needing to discuss it, both sides stopped. Qing Shu was dead, while Bai Ning Bing was gravely wounded. During the Wolf Tide, losses of this scale were already horrifying. If the two clans began a large battle here, their chances of surviving the greater disaster would fall even further. In any world, people fought mainly for benefits. And the greatest benefit of all was survival. In the end, Gu Yue clan recovered Qing Shu's remains and Gu worms. Both sides watched each other warily as they withdrew from the battlefield. Rain fell from a dark sky, leaving the world dim and gray. A group of people stood on a hillside behind Gu Yue village. This was the clan cemetery. Every few days, it seemed, another grave appeared here. Survival was harsh in this world. Whether the danger came from outside the clan or from within it, lives were constantly sacrificed. The elder's hoarse, solemn voice drifted across the hillside, deepening the weight in everyone's heart. We share the same surname. We came from the same clan, and the same blood flows through our veins. We stand only a few steps apart, yet life and death have separated us. At this moment, grief fills my heart. Wait for me. One day, perhaps I too will lie beside you. May we become soil together and nourish those who come after us. Before the newly raised grave, everyone lowered their heads. Some wept quietly. Others stared at the name carved into the gravestone with silent sorrow. The cruelty of life and death was like a pale skeletal hand, tearing open the heart and leaving behind a bleeding wound. Some people had already been wounded so often that they had grown numb. Others still possessed hearts too young and tender to endure it. Gu Yue Fang Zheng stood among the mourners, staring blankly at the 4 characters carved into the stone. Yue Qing Shu dead. Confusion filled his eyes. Everything from yesterday's battle remained vivid in his mind. Every moment had been branded into his heart. His experience was still too shallow. He had not understood the tragic heroism of Qing Shu's sacrifice while it was happening. Now reality stood before him, cold and undeniable, and he still could not accept it. Dead. Lord Qing Shu, who always smiled so gently, who taught me, cared for me, and forgave me, is he really dead? Why? Why do the good die so easily while evil people continue to live? Is this a dream? Am I still dreaming? Fang Zheng pinched himself unconsciously. The pain was real, and that only made his grief heavier. Around him, people murmured in low voices. I never thought even Lord Qing Shu would be sacrificed. Everyone dies eventually, but it is still such a pity. I heard Bai Ning Bing was still breathing and managed to survive. May Lord Qing Shu rest beneath the earth and protect us through the rest of this wolf tide. The crowd gradually dispersed. In the end, only Fang Zheng remained. The young man stood alone before the graves and stone markers covering the mountainside. Lord Qing Shu, his knees struck the ground. Tears poured from his eyes. He was lost. He was regretful, helpless, and overwhelmed by sorrow. Drip, drip, drip. Heavy rain fell from the black clouds, striking the earth and forcing every blade of grass and every tender branch to bow. The smell of wet soil filled Fang Zheng's nose. He cried without restraint, his sobs mingling with the rain. His fingers dug deep into the mud, as though he could drag Qing Shu's life back from beneath the earth. But when he opened his hands, all he held were 2 fistfuls of dirt. Rain began to fall over Bai clan village as well. Bai Ning Bing lay on a soft bed, staring blankly at the storm beyond the window. The place where his right arm had been severed had already been treated and wrapped in clean white bandages. His eyes had returned to their original deep black, and his cultivation was once again rank 3. He was no longer suppressing it to rank 2. Ever since waking from unconsciousness, he had felt drained of interest, as though the world no longer contained anything worth enjoying. More than 10 hours had passed. He had remained there with his eyes open, not even bothering to circulate the rank 3 white-silver primeval essence that was nourishing his aperture. The rain stirred memories buried deep within him. It had been on another summer day like this that the Bai clan leader formally adopted him. The clan leader had looked at him with affection and boundless expectation, while the elders' praises surged around him like a tide. Back then, Bai Ning Bing had been small and barefoot, standing on the cold floor. He had ignored them all and stared through the window at the rain, feeling only confusion and loneliness. What does it mean to be alive? That question had troubled him for 20 years. Perhaps it would continue haunting him until the day his aperture exploded and he died. Is it for family, for the clan? He could not help thinking of Gu Yue Qing Shu. From childhood until now, he had witnessed many such sacrifices. Some had been made by members of Bai clan. Others by Gu Yue clan or Xian clan. He could not understand their fervor. It was as though he had been born without emotion, cold and indifferent from the beginning. Gu Yue Qing Shu had not given him the answer. And so another figure appeared in Bai Ning Bing's mind, Fang Yuan. The first time he had seen Fang Yuan, the young man had been leaning against a tree, eating a wild fruit he had casually picked while watching the battle below with complete indifference. At the time, Bai Ning Bing had been so excited that his entire body trembled. He had seen himself reflected in Fang Yuan's deep black eyes. But now, when he recalled that gaze, Bai Ning Bing realized there had been something else within it. Something he himself did not possess. Something that might answer the question tormenting him. The rain grew heavier. Thunder rolled and lightning flashed across the sky. What does it mean to be alive? In a dim study within Gu Yue village, Fang Zheng asked the same question. Clan leader Gu Yue sighed. He looked with compassion at the dispirited young man before him, then turned his gaze toward the rain beyond the window. He understood Fang Zheng's confusion. The unavoidable reality of death often forced people to consider the value of life. Do you know? Gu Yue finally said after a long silence. More than 10 years ago, another young man stood before me and asked the same question. That person was your team leader, my adopted son, Yue Qing Shu. Fang Zheng looked up in surprise. His eyes were swollen and red, yet filled with desperate hunger for an answer. I told him that a person may have 10,000 reasons to live, Gu Yue continued. But I cannot tell you why you should live, only you can answer that. You must search for the reason yourself, then what is your own answer? Fang Zheng asked, blinking through his tears. Gu Yue laughed softly. For a moment, Fang Zheng's image seemed to overlap with Qing Shu's. His adopted son had asked the same thing many years ago. The clan leader fell silent, recalling the answer he had given then. An organization will always require sacrifice. The moment a person is born, death has already become inevitable. Between life and death, human beings are fragile beyond measure. But there is something that can warm the heart and illuminate the soul. That thing is love. That is my answer. Sacrifice had always existed. Gu Qing Shu had been Gu Yue's adopted son, raised by him for many years. Now Qing Shu was dead, and as his father, Gu Yue naturally grieved. But as clan leader, he had witnessed too many sacrifices. Once a person understood life and death, grief became easier to bear. Fang Zheng lowered his head again and remained silent, as though deep in thought. Gu Yue smiled faintly, opened a drawer and removed a letter. He handed it to Fang Zheng. This is a letter written by Qing Shu. It contains the answer he reached after many years of thought. I am giving it to you now, read it. There was no doubt that the letter held an irresistible attraction for Fang Zheng. He opened it. The moment he saw the first line, tears began flowing again. It was Qing Shu's familiar handwriting, every line carrying the same gentle warmth that had always belonged to him. The beginning described his confusion and pain. Then came the events that had moved him over the years, and the gradual process through which he had searched for meaning. As Fang Zheng read, it felt as though he were living Qing Shu's life beside him. He followed every step of Qing Shu's path until he reached the final passage. The clan is like a forest, and every one of us is a tree within it. The old trees spread their branches, shielding the young saplings from wind and rain. When the saplings finally grow into towering trees, the old ones fall. Their bodies become nourishment in the soil, feeding the earth from which new life will rise. Human beings must die in the end. Even Gu masters cannot escape death. A rank 7, rank 8, or even rank 9 Gu master merely lives longer than others. I am afraid of death. But I understand that one day, I, Gu Qing Shu, will die as well. Perhaps from age, illness, or injury, perhaps on the battlefield. When that day comes, I only hope I can walk toward death calmly, without regret. At the very end of the letter were the final words. Adoptive father, I once asked you a question. I believe I have now found my answer. By the time Fang Zheng finished reading, he was sobbing so hard that he could no longer speak. His mind filled with memories of Qing Shu. When Fang Zheng made mistakes, Qing Shu had never blamed him, he had comforted him. When Fang Zheng lost confidence, Qing Shu had encouraged him with a single look. When Fang Zheng felt defeated, Qing Shu had placed a warm hand on his head. Gu Yue took the letter back. When you discover your own answer, you may write me a letter as well. Go now, return home and rest. The wolf tide is not over and the clan will still need your strength. No. Fang Zheng slowly raised his head and clenched his fists. What is it? Gu Yue asked. I have already found my answer. A determination beyond words filled Fang Zheng's voice. I want strength. I want the strength to protect those close to me so they will never be hurt again. I want to protect the clan and make it stronger. I want to see the wolf tide fail to torment us any longer. I want my friends to live happily and smile again. I never want this pain to happen again. I will use these hands, this body, and this soul to protect the people beside me. Surprise appeared on Gu Yue's face. At that moment, it was as though he were looking at King Shu once more. King Shu, your death was not meaningless. As he looked into Fang Zheng's shining eyes, the clan leader sighed inwardly. An old tree had fallen. And from the soil enriched by its decay, a new sapling had begun to grow. Renzu could not endure the pain of the heart of loneliness, so he tore out his 2 eyes and transformed them into a son and a daughter. Only then did his suffering ease, but happiness did not last. His children gradually became fascinated by the wonders of the world. They forgot their father's hopes, spent all their time playing, and even neglected to care for Renzu. Renzu could no longer see. Darkness covered everything before him. Yet from time to time he caught a faint trace of light. Confused, he asked the Attitude Gu for guidance. The Attitude Gu told him, that is the immortal radiance released by the Faith Gu. Faith. Bai Ning Bing read that far and gave a mocking laugh. He casually threw aside the book containing the ancient legends. At that moment the door opened, and the newcomer was nearly struck in the face by the flying volume. Ning Bings, what are you doing? The visitor was the Bai clan leader. He frowned and tried to persuade him. I know you are in a poor mood, but losing your right arm is not the end of the world. There are many Gu worms capable of restoring an injury like this. In the past, I arranged for elders to remain beside you and protect you, but you always refused. You even attacked them. This time you finally suffered for it. Still, that is not necessarily a bad thing. Your injury is no longer serious, and as long as you are alive, it can be treated. But the wolf tide is becoming more dangerous. The clan needs your strength. A few wolves, what is there to fear? Bai Ning Bing closed his eyes and lay back on the bed, speaking with complete indifference. The clan leader's expression grew grave. The situation is poor, worse than poor. According to our scouts, no fewer than 3 frenzy lightning wolf packs have appeared around the village. Your defeat has also had a severe effect on morale. I want you to appear publicly this evening. As long as the clansmen see that you have not fallen, their spirits will recover. Do you understand? I understand, I understand. It is only a small matter, Bai Ning Bing muttered impatiently. Had anyone else spoken to the clan leader in such a manner, they would have been harshly punished. But Bai Ning Bing was different. The Bai clan leader could only sigh helplessly before closing the door and leaving. Once again, Bai Ning Bing was alone. He slowly opened his eyes. Confusion and loneliness filled them. He had told no one about the condition of his body or the death he sensed approaching. From the clan's ancient records, he had discovered the name of his physique, the Northern Dark Ice Soul Physique. In the few surviving documents, the 10 extreme physiques were also called talents destined to die. Once their aperture walls reached the limit, the resulting explosion would possess unimaginable power. The Bai clan leader had raised Bai Ning Bing and indulged him throughout his life. But if Bai Ning Bing revealed the truth about the Northern Dark Ice Soul Physique, the first person who would want him dead would undoubtedly be that very clan leader. What does it mean to be alive? Whenever he had considered this question in the past, Bai Ning Bing had fallen into confusion. Boredom, irritation, resentment, and countless other dark emotions had followed. But now his heart was completely calm. People grew after all. Even more so a genius like him. In the past, he had known that he was destined to die. In his despair, he had clung to life, while fear of death remained buried deep within his heart. But after truly coming close to death, he finally understood something. He was no longer afraid. He still did not know the meaning of life. But he knew where the answer could be found. That answer had always existed inside Fang Yuan. The feeling was impossible to explain. It was mysterious and intangible, yet Bai Ning Bing was certain of it. Besides, the stone aperture Gu was now in Fang Yuan's hands. Fang Yuan, we will meet again. He whispered the words, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes like a diamond catching the sun. Stone aperture Gu. Inside his rented room, Fang Yuan studied the Gu worm in his hand. It looked like a die, perfectly square, gray-white, and extremely hard. This was an expendable Gu worm. Once used, it would disappear. Its function was to transform a Gu Master's aperture walls into solid stone. Doing so exhausted all remaining potential within the aperture, but allowed the Gu Master to reach the peak stage of the current rank in an instant. For example, Fang Yuan was presently a rank 2 middle stage Gu Master. If he used the stone aperture Gu, his cultivation would immediately rise to rank 2 peak stage. But the price would be severe. He would never be able to advance to rank 3. His aperture would also lose its ability to recover primeval essence naturally. From then on, he could only replenish it by absorbing primeval stones. The stone aperture Gu was meant for Gu masters who had reached the end of the road. If someone's aperture had suffered damage or developed cracks that could not be healed, they might have no choice but to use it. Or, under special circumstances, a Gu master with no hope of future advancement might urgently need greater cultivation merely to survive. Such a person might also choose the stone aperture Gu. The cost of refining this Gu is quite high. Bai Ning Bing must have intended to turn his aperture into stone in order to delay the destruction of his body. Unfortunately, this method can only postpone death. It cannot prevent it. If the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique could be resolved so easily, it would not deserve to be called one of the 10 extreme physiques. The stone aperture Gu had no use for Fang Yuan. But the red steel relic Gu and water shield Gu he had taken from Bai Ning Bing were both extremely valuable. As for the Gu worms he recovered from Gu Yue Manxi's group, none were exceptional. After returning to the village, he handed them over to the clan and received a large amount of battle merit in exchange. Because the wolf tide still raged, the 3 clans tacitly suppressed the truth of the fierce battle between King Shu and Bai Ning Bing. Each side swallowed its anger. All 3 clans needed one another's strength to survive the coming disaster. Xinglin's report had exposed the fact that Fang Yuan possessed the white jade Gu. But Fang Yuan claimed that he had purchased it from a merchant caravan, temporarily covering the matter.